What is this kind of almost allergy to using not only your internal expertise, but not to actually invest in that expertise and just need that rubber stamp? Because that's what ultimately it is, a rubber stamp of McKinsey or Deloitte that makes both governments and businesses. One of the subtitles is weakens our businesses. Why is that? And we look at two different issues. One is that this kind of dismantling of state capacity has also led to gaps where sometimes literally even just numbers of people don't exist. I experienced this with the COVID-19 recovery in Italy, where, the Treasury basically outsourced the recovery to, I keep talking about McKinsey, but there's lots of these consulting companies. It's BCG, Bain, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and
BCG's
so on.
BCG's Boston Consulting Group.
Yeah, Boston Consulting Group. And so one thing is that as a consequence of not just the austerity, but the dismantling of state capacity, there often is the need to bring in others to help you out. But when those others don't have the expertise, that's the real kind of interesting challenge. Because, of course, there's lots of expertise in universities, for example. And I'm not just saying this because I'm an academic, but I know some top climate experts around the world, like at the Potsdam Institute in Germany, they have amazing climate science. That would be a more natural place, right, to go to for climate expertise. But the rubber stamp of the consulting companies is something that is looked upon as justifying, as making look good a government that is fearful, especially on the back of so much kind of government bashing, that somehow there isn't that expertise inside government. And also sometimes to make uncomfortable decisions. So this is also something that we, don't blame consultants. We say that both with businesses and government, sometimes letting someone else not so much take the blame, but have their kind of brand on it allows you to maybe do some controversial activities. In the private sector, we look, for example, at the downsizing trend, the financialization trend, by saying, oh, it was, recommended by or rubber stamped by a consulting company. It might go down the throat easier. And so in that case, we say businesses should actually own up to the decisions they're made, as opposed to just requiring that rubber stamp of the consulting company. But also there's a risk averseness. There's a fear of making mistakes. And what's interesting, I've talked about this in other books, that whereas we celebrate risk-taking and making mistakes in the private sector, as soon as a civil servant makes a mistake, bang, front page of the Daily Mail. Public servants, civil servants are not allowed to make mistakes, which is a problem. This is something we talk about. Trial and error. You would not learn how to ride a bike if you did not fall off. So the fact that governments, part of the consequence of outsourcing, of privatizing, of consultifying is in fact what Lord Agnew, the conservative lord who made this accusation, that Whitehall was getting infantilized. Infantilized means you're kind of becoming a baby. You're not learning. You're not growing up. You're still an infant. So this is one of the biggest problems, that even though you might be doing it out of fear, because you'd prefer someone else to be taking the risk so you don't go blame when things go wrong, you ultimately will get addicted. You will require that help constantly, right? Because you're not growing up. You're not building that capacity. And this is one of the things we talk about. We say that, the reason the sector, because it's the consulting industry that we kind of focus on, not just consultants, is problematic, is that the business model itself kind of relies on that next contract following. Whereas if you're a really good therapist, for example, you don't want your client to be in therapy their whole life. That probably means you're a bad therapist.